This is Mike Peregrine with KC Windshield Repair in Kansas City, Missouri, and today we're going to be doing a bullseye repair on a windshield. I'll show you what's involved with that. Just in preparation for it, getting started, I'll show you what I do. I always put a fine cloth on the hood of the vehicle so that I don't damage the vehicle while I'm doing the repair. My belt buckle or anything like that doesn't come in contact with the car paint, and that just makes sure that I don't do any additional damage. We don't want that. So with a bullseye, bullseyes are usually pretty easy to repair. They fill in very nicely, so we'll see how this one goes today. So here's a before shot of what that brake looks like up close. It's actually a combination brake. It's got air pockets like a bullseye, but it's also got crack legs extending out from the center pit. So these are pretty tricky to fill because those crack legs can be really tight, and you got to make sure the resin gets down inside each and every one of them. So before I start the repair, the first thing I'm going to do is clean out the damaged area from any little debris or glass debris or chips that might be in the middle of the pit of the brake. And I use my carbide tip probe to do that. I just kind of press down into the brake and pull out any loose materials that might be contained inside the middle of it. And this particular probe also has the ability to open up the bullseye just a little bit. If I put it down in the middle of the pit and then I tap it just like that, it opens up that bullseye so it'll accept the resin a little bit better. So next I placed a mirror on the inside of the windshield. Sometimes with these brakes I will use heat to expand the cracked area just a little bit, and then when I inject it with resin it pulls it down into the crack legs better. But this particular brake, I'm not going to need to do that, I don't think. It looks like it will probably inject just fine. Before I get started though, one thing I am going to do is test. I'll press in on various parts of the brake just to make sure there isn't any moisture or water down inside it, because if there's moisture then it won't look good. The repair will be a bad repair, it won't pass. So this particular one is dry. There isn't anything in there that I can see. When you press on it on the top of the glass or on the inside of the glass, you can see if there's moisture. You'll see it moving around inside, but this one is fine. If it does have moisture, then you have to use some sort of evaporation technique to get that water out of there, and I'll show you that in another video when I need it. So today I'm going to take my tool here, my injector and bridge, and I'm going to prepare it first, getting it ready for the repair. So I just put it into position and then I fill it with 3 or 4 drops of resin. I personally like this premium bond resin from Delta Kits. I think it looks really nice. It does a good job getting down into the brake. So that's what I'm going to use today. And I'll just put 3 or 4 drops in there. And once it's in, put the tip back into the injector. I have loaded this from the top too. I prefer to bottom load before I inject. Then I position it using my mirror over the pit. Get the suction cup down and then put both of the sides of the injector down against the glass, just so it's just snug, just tight in there. After that I cover it with a UV shield because we don't want UV light infecting the brake before it's ready to cure. We want it to be free of any possibility of curing that resin. So right now as it's sitting on there, I can already see the resin going down into that chipped area, but I'm going to vacuum the brake first by just pulling out on my injector tip not all the way, but just enough to create a vacuum. And I'm going to go through 2 or 3 vacuum and pressure cycles. I can already see the air pulling out of this brake as I do it. See if I can get the camera up there where you can see it working. The brake is already filling in very nicely. So this repair should really look good by the time it's done. One thing I have learned on brakes, especially combination brakes, this one isn't a true bullseye, it's actually a combination. It's got some crack legs on it. So one thing I've learned is to allow time for the resin to really get down into each of those crack legs. Don't be impatient. So I'm just going to let it sit on here for a few minutes. Put it under pressure now. And I'm just going to let it sit. So this brake was a little more complicated, or it is a little more complicated than I anticipated. And I had to put some more resin into my injector. I also did apply some heat to the inside of the windshield. I just waved this around the flame. I let it heat up, not too much. You don't want to go too hot with it, because you don't want the windshield to, the potential for it to crack if it gets, the variations in temperatures are too extreme. So you just are careful to heat it up to where it's hot to the touch, and that helps the resin stream a little bit better. And then I added a few more drops of resin to the injector, because there's a lot of space in this particular brake that needs to be injected, but it's doing real well. There's one little area that I can see on the top where there's still some air trapped, so I'm going to work on vacuuming and pressure cycles to try and get that out, try and remove it. One way you can try to get that trapped air to move is to take your scribe, your probe, and to gently press around the area of the air, and it will help the resin to flow into that trapped air, that broken area right there. This one's being really stubborn. Here again, with that stubborn air that's trapped in there, I'm just going to let this sit for a while, and sometimes that will just fill in on its own. It's starting to. It's looking a lot better. I'm going to keep, now I'm applying pressure, and I'm going to keep doing that for just a few more minutes, and it should fill right in. And I said this a minute ago, but I'll say it again because it's so important. Don't get in a hurry to do these repairs. Just take your time, because they will eventually reward you with success if you just let it sit on there. Like I said, continue doing cycles between vacuum and pressure, and eventually it just works, especially when there's tight crack legs. I'll keep putting pressure on the inside of the windshield with my scribe, move those crack legs around just slightly, help the resin flow into them. But really the most important thing for me is just to sit here and wait and let it fill. And this one's doing it. That tiny little air pocket is filling in right now. So it's going really well. But patience, you just can't beat patience. Okay, so sorry about the lawnmower here, but it's that time of year. So I've waited, and that last little air pocket has virtually disappeared. I can still see a tiny little pinpoint that just refuses to go in, but it's not noticeable. In fact, you can't really see it at all. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to go ahead and cure it, and I'm going to cure this under pressure. That's the way I was trained to do it. Cure under pressure, and plus on this one there are some crack legs that I've noticed that when I release the vacuum, or when I pull a vacuum, it tends to open those crack legs back up. So I'm going to keep it under pressure here. The sun's coming out, so that'll help cure it. But I'm also going to use my UV light to finish the cure. Actually, now the sun is really out for a few minutes, so I'm going to take advantage of that. The sun is really the best source of UV light. So hopefully that will get that cure on the inside started, and then I can finish curing the pit once this sits in the sun for a few minutes. There's enough clouds coming over too that I may use my UV light for just a couple of minutes on it. Even though I probably don't need to use this light today, I'm going to, just to show you how it is. I use an independent power pack, just a small instant power pack that I carry with me to give me power everywhere I go. And then I bought this, it's a 20-watt UV lamp. I got it on Amazon, so it's a pretty powerful lamp. And I'm just going to turn this on, and then I'm going to let that UV light sit over the brake for just a couple minutes. I think usually it takes about 4 minutes for me to be comfortable with it curing enough to pull this and put a tab on the pit, but it's been curing in the sun here already, and this is a pretty powerful lamp, so I'm just going to let this sit on here for 2 minutes. And the brake is looking really, really good. I can tell this one's gonna look really nice when it's done. In fact, you're hardly gonna be able to see it, hopefully, once it's fully cured. And if it sits in the sun, of course today is really cloudy and it's gonna rain here just a little bit, but if you can let the brake sit in the sun the rest of the afternoon, then it really gets hard. In fact, the chipped area, that once it's filled with resin, it becomes the strongest part of your windshield, because that resin is harder and stronger than the glass itself. So there won't be any possibility of this chipping out or cracking in the future, which is why I can offer my customers a full lifetime guarantee for as long as they own the vehicle. This particular vehicle is a rental, so the customer wanted to fix the damage before it went back to the rental company, so they wouldn't have to pay any additional out-of-pocket expenses and fees once it goes back. Should be coming up on the 2-minute mark here in just a little bit. The little crack legs on the bottom side of this brake filled in so perfectly. The brake itself is just slightly cloudy, and I'm not sure. It could be that just it's such a big area that it's filling in. There's a lot of resin in this pocket, so that hopefully will clear up a little bit more the more that it sets in the sunlight. All right, it's been 2 minutes, so I'm going to remove my ultraviolet light. Turn it off. All right, so I think the lawnmower is finally cutting out here. Sorry about that. He was mowing the same area like over and over, and it's right by my camera, of course. So anyway, this has been sitting now in the sun for several minutes, and it's time to cure the pit as well. So the pit is the little indentation where the rock actually struck the outside layer of the glass, and I'm going to fill that in with a thicker pit resin and then cure that as the final step in the curing process. I use a little Mylar tab. I've got a bunch of new ones at home. I forgot to bring them with me today, but this one I've used several times, but it's fine. The tab will trap the that thick pit resin down in the pit, so I can cure it without the resin coming out of it. So I'm going to release the pressure on this now. Pull the tool off the glass without too much resin escaping, hopefully. Looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and fill the pit with this thicker resin. Oh, there it goes. And then put that little tab on top of it. We're going to let that sit in the sun now for several minutes. And I'll probably use my UV light again on it as well, so that that pit resin can harden up really good. One thing I don't really care for with this light is I don't have any suction cups on it yet, so it doesn't adhere to the glass itself. I always have to hold it for 2 or 3 minutes, but it's fine for now. They make these lights specifically for this purpose that have suction cups on them, which I need to pick one up. But I really like this light just because it cures fast, it's strong, and it's always done really well for me, so I keep using it. This break is going to clear up to probably, I'd say, a good 90–95%, so you'll hardly be able to tell the damage was ever there. Hopefully. We'll see here in just a few minutes what the final product looks like. Once I let this sit for a few minutes, then I will show you how I fix up that pit, how I finalize it. The mower is back, but it is. While this is still curing in the sun, I like to take one of my business cards here and I flip it over on the back and I fill out their guarantee information for them. I'll leave this in the vehicle. They're not home right now, so I'll leave this in the vehicle for them, and I'll take a picture of it too, so that I have a record of when I did this and the type of repair, where it's located on the windshield. And then if it ever does crack, which it won't, 100% guarantee it will not crack, but if for some reason it did, they would get their money back on this repair. But I've never had one crack in the past. I've been doing this since 1997, so I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that this is a good repair and it's going to last the life of the car. But these business cards are really handy. Then they'll keep your card too, because you've got the guarantee on the back, so they'll hang on to this, use you again in the future, hopefully. So here again is the before shot, and you can see just how bad this break was. If you were standing back away from the vehicle and you were looking at the windshield, it really stood out. It was a prominent feature in the glass. But now here's what it looks like after the repair work was done. Much better, significant improvement, probably 80–90% improvement in visibility. And if this yellow tag wasn't there behind the glass and you were standing back, you couldn't see it at all. If you got up close, you could still see some of the crack legs in there. And the reason for that is this was an aged brake. It had been in there for a while, so it had allowed contaminants and things to work their way into the damaged area. So there's no way to perfectly repair damage like that. But the good thing is this will never crack. It will save the owner from paying a deductible and fixing their windshield or replacing their windshield, and it's a much better alternative to windshield replacement. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to get some more videos on here as I perform some more work. Take care of yourselves. Bye.